How Fire Emblem Three Houses influenced my DMing style. I'm going to try my best to avoid huge spoilers regarding the plot of this game, but to sum it up, there is a continent or three big nations who are having a big war. That's the game. Alright, a little background. One of my favorite games of all time is Final Fantasy Tactics. The systems, the gameplay, and the complexity of the story took hold of me when I first tried it. I've probably played through that game 10 times or more, and I absolutely love it. The story was one of the first to introduce a young Crashgem to the idea that bad guys could be good and good guys could be bad, and people could be good and evil at the same time. And based on cultural values, personal beliefs, and all manner of other factors, whoever the story was being told about was the hero of the story. It was an eye-opening experience, to say the least, and a lot of the things that were so groundbreaking and innovative about the Final Fantasy Tactics story are now tried and true story tropes. But at the time, it really was a very enlightening experience regarding morality, religion, cultural values, and storytelling. Plus, the gameplay was phenomenal. So I was always looking for other turn-based, grid-based RPGs to satiate the thirst for more Final Fantasy Tactics style games. But you fast forward many, many years, and Fire Emblem Three Houses came out. And this game was recommended to me by people on a weekly basis. Everyone told me to try it out for different reasons, but all the people that were recommending it felt that I would really enjoy the game. But every time I looked into it, I got confused. You had anime waifus and husbandos, you had tea parties, the graphics were kinda hokey. I just didn't know what was even going on with it. I don't know. There was a lot of weird things going on. Is this a dating simulator, or is this a turn-based, tactical, grid-based war game? Is it both? I don't know what's happening here. But eventually, I started to realize that I was avoiding the inevitable. I really needed to try out this game, and I did. And you know what happened? I loved it. It completely took over the dopamine production centers of my brain. There were so many quality of life and difficulty handicaps that were introduced to make an already great franchise even more accessible to casual players, myself included. From that point on, my Switch went everywhere with me, and I played Fire Emblem Three Houses any chance I got. I picked up the expansion, and I played through that. I could not get enough of this game. What pulled me in? What made it so engaging? Was it the combat? Not really. There was a simple paper, scissors, rock matchup. There were some stats to grind. There was some math to do. But it wasn't anything new or different that I hadn't already seen in 30 years of playing video games. Was it the graphics? Not really. I mean, I love the character designs, and I loved some of the artwork used for the game. But overall, it just sort of had a, this is a Switch game vibe to it. And that's not a problem, because, you know, graphics can only carry something so far. So what was it? What was holding me so tightly? What was really making me keep playing this game? And the answer was the kids. Those goddamn kids. The students and the staff of the monastery, which is sort of the hub of the entire game. It's a military school / religious institution. That's a whole thing that plays pretty heavy into the plot. You're basically a teacher, by circumstance, that is training child soldiers. And that's a whole thing. All of these NPCs, the fellow staff and the students, they were all tropes. But that's not bad. I mean, in a way, we're all tropes. Tropes are the fastest way to make an NPC connect with your players and stay memorable, so it's just a smart storytelling thing to do. But beneath the surface of these tropes, there was so much more. There was so much depth. The characters had hobbies, they had dreams, they had hopes, and they had losses. They were connected to each other and to the world. Their families were intertwined, their destinies brushing up against one another. An excellent example, there is a character who is an absolute womanizing playboy. You meet him and immediately you know this guy is a scummy, womanizing flirt. But as you follow his growth through the story, as his bonds strengthen with the other students, you learn so much more about him. The secret love he holds for his childhood friend, the resentment he feels towards the false affections he receives from the many suitors hoping to marry into his noble blood, the weight of responsibility he bears to carry his family line, despite not even being the firstborn son. This is a broken boy who hurts others because he has been hurt, but this is also a boy who will grow into a man with the strongest convictions and honor. It is powerful stuff. The students, the staff, the NPCs, all of them, they need guidance through the turmoil of life. And not a normal life. A life as a child soldier, as an academic, as a general, as a fighter tasked with training those child soldiers. Some of these NPCs are carrying the burdens of nobility, and others are just trying to find a way to rise above the shackles of poverty and peasantry. I could care less about each new battle that the game introduced, though many were very, very enjoyable. I just wanted to unlock the next chapter of each NPC story. I wanted to find out more about what would drive them to risk everything. Because default setting, if these kids died in battle, they're gone for the rest of the playthrough. That's it. It's Iron Man. I had never felt the heavy yoke of a noble's birthright, but this game showed me, more so than Game of Thrones or any of those other noble life media options, that nobles had very little control over their lives. They were tools, gears in the great clockwork machine of their own dynasties. It was heartbreaking to know many of them would be forced to choose family over happiness, that many would fight to the death against family or friends based on these noble obligations. When I heard that some of the NPCs grew up homeless, stealing and selling themselves to survive, it wasn't just another edgy party rogue backstory. It had weight. I wanted to help them succeed. I needed that. These were my students, and I needed to see them grow up and realize their ambitions. But every battle was an opportunity to lose them forever. When the stakes were highest, my heart pounded. I could not lose these kids. The stakes were so high, and I made them that high by learning about my students, by knowing them, and in many cases, by loving them. The more invested in these kids I became, the more important every battle became as well. Then there's a time skip in the game. Not a huge spoiler, but worth mentioning. Because separated for over 5 years, you return to find your faithful students changed by 5 years of war and conflict. Now they're young adults, and they've been baptized in blood and conflict. They have stepped into the roles they sought or dreaded, and they've begun to reshape the world. They have started to fall in love with you and with each other, and now the bonds are stronger than ever, and the loss, it's hard to think about. It's hard to think about if one of these NPCs dies. All those other NPCs are left behind to deal with the massive hole in their hearts and their lives that this NPC left when they died. Because we'll never find out what happened. We'll never complete those open story arcs. We'll never know. Because they're gone. By the end of Three Houses, I would frequently say to my wife when talking about the game, I would die for these kids. If a story option asked me to choose me or them, I would die for them. They were well past being NPCs in a video game. These were my kids. And in your average first playthrough, you didn't win the hearts of every student. You didn't secure every ally that came along. And the war was messy. I watched NPCs slaughter each other, former friends, former lovers, killing one another in the streets of their own cities, driven by my ambitions, or worse, the ambitions of another NPC who had my heart in an iron grip. In the end, because all things have to end, you were treated to one of my favorite things, Epilogues. And I'll tell you right now, I was sobbing, full on bawling as I read them. Sorrow, pride, relief, joy, it was powerful. And the things that I did mattered. What I had done during my playthrough shaped the paths that these characters had walked and the futures that they walked into at the end. I was hit hard by the magnitude of that, and immediately I decided, in my D&D games, we needed epilogues. And I needed to make NPCs that people cared about. Fortunately, I was already making some pretty great NPCs, but I knew that I could do better. Less is more, and consistent NPCs who stick around, who reappear, who are part of the heroes' lives and the lives of their fellow NPCs. That's the goal. Family ties, political ties, rivalries. I wanted and needed all of this. I needed NPCs who had value. The value the NPCs had would carry over into everything else. Favored NPC asks for something, the players want to do it. Two NPC rivals need a dispute settled by the players. We wind up with a stronger investment in the scene, better chances for roleplay. An NPC dies to save the party as a result of player mistakes to a vengeful BBEG. That stuff hits harder, and you want that stuff to hit hard. You want it to land strong. You want it to stick around. That's the value of better NPCs. The more valuable the NPCs are, the more valuable the story becomes. The more invested everyone is. This is what we need to make a stronger narrative, a better game. And the epilogues, well, they reward your players, and they help soften the hurt that comes with knowing a campaign is over. Yeah, the story that we've been building for 2 or more years is being put back on the shelf. But look at what you have done. Look at how you changed everything. You mattered. You drove this world forward. You might not see this NPC every Wednesday night anymore, but you will always remember them. And remember that at the end, they went on into their next adventure, down a path you helped them find, or perhaps set them upon, or maybe even decided to walk with them. It's powerful stuff. So yeah, Fire Emblem Three Houses taught me a lot about storytelling and drove home the importance of good quality non-player characters. So I'm kind of leaving you hanging here because I'm telling you what influence Three Houses had on me and why it's important and why I changed the way I run my games to incorporate this stuff. But I'm not telling you how to do that. But I will in a future video. So when that video is finally made, I'll link it in the little description box thing at the bottom. And you can try and go watch it. But in the meantime, the big takeaway is use your NPCs. The NPCs are the best way to make the characters, make the player characters connected to the world, invested in the world, and ultimately feel like they are a part of that world. So, yeah, get started. Special thank you goes out to my patrons over at Patreon. They are the ones who voted for this video to be made, and the main reason that I'm even making content at all, because without their support, I would definitely not have the time to do so. So it's always appreciated. If you're interested in that, go check us out. The links are in the description, and I will see you next time.